So we're trying something new on the show this week. If you follow me on Instagram at Shana Speaks, you know that I was in the hospital with my 1-year-old last week, and then I caught a virus that stole my voice. So needless to say, I've been out of commission for a couple of weeks. So I'm giving you exclusive access to a segment from a paid training that I did. And this training is specifically talking about how escalation applies to conflict resolution. So if you're a business owner and you feel like your team is always pulling you into the weeds whenever there's a little complaint inside of the community, or if you're a community manager and you're never quite sure when you should be handling conflict yourself or when you should be escalating it up to your business owner, this episode is going to cover just that. Okay, so the first thing is expectation. The second thing is preparation. The third is escalation. First, delegate, delegate, delegate. You hear me say this all the time, but who is doing the mass monitoring of your community? Who can flag particular instances that are potential conflict instances? Like, who is doing that? Who is looking at that? That's one. Two is, as a community manager, this may not be your skill. It may not, and that's okay. But you might have somebody on support who it is their skill to have these kinds of conversations, and that's okay. As a business owner, I recommend that you stay out of these conversations whenever you can. Maybe you want to be in the first few, but it's much easier to be corrected and gently realigned by a team member than it is the business owner that you love and admire. So that's a way to delegate as well, right? But this escalation process is really important. So we talked a little bit about this in internal communication, but you might have volunteers, you might have a community manager, a director, an integrator, primary influencer, and you can see how like it goes from somebody reporting a post to the community manager sees it. The community manager determines that this needs to be responded to because it's not something we have in our response database. We've never responded to anything like this, or this person is a chronic problem for us. Okay, so now I go to the community director or my boss and I say, feel like we need to address this. And the community director may be able to support and step in, or they may say, we've really never dealt with this before. I think we need to get the business owner involved. And sometimes you can then go directly to the business owner. And then sometimes there's an integrator between you and the business owner. And either way, like you're seeing how this escalation is happening to where we don't take all of these problems to the business owner. We got to protect their energy, especially during the launch. We have to protect their energy, which requires us to be prepared, but we have to protect their energy. So that's the escalation piece. So by the time it gets to the business owner, they know how important it is. They know how important it is. And we are honoring them by protecting them from the negative, right? So they'll honor us by showing up for us when we need it. So when do you involve the business owner in something like this? Well, it's up to them. You need to be having these conversations. But if you've been with the company for a while and you guys have good systems around responses in place, then typically it comes down to two things. Either we've never tackled this before, so I don't know how they would respond, or this is an intentional realignment moment because the community as a whole needs a correction on the culture or the cause side of things. And then maybe one other one is that they somehow have a personal relationship with this person. You know that they have a personal connection to them. They've been a member for many, many years. They are affiliates for each other, whatever it might be. They have a personal connection. That's when you would involve the business owner. The only time that I would rush escalation is during a launch. So you want to make sure to escalate things faster. So for example, like if somebody's posting objections inside of the community, like, oh my gosh, this is too expensive, or anything that feels like an attack on the program, on the person, you want to escalate that super fast. And the reason being is that when you raise those objections quicker in a launch, you can make sure that it's addressed in a timely manner since you have closed cart. Energy is typically high in a launch. Things can catch fire really quick and spread really fast. So when you see like a hot button topic on like price or offer or whatever they're teaching, then that's typically something you want to escalate faster so that they can use that as a quick realignment moment because they're in the middle of the launch. It's not something you want to save till after launch, especially when it's related to an objection. So you would just say like after they're done with their lives for the day, don't bring this up right before a webinar, right? But you could say like, we're getting a lot of objections about pricing. Can you address that in a live or in the next Q&A? You wouldn't say, Joe posted today about how your price is way too darn expensive and you're not worth the value. He's a jerk. Oh my gosh. We should say something to him. See the difference? One makes it personal. It brings negative energy. The other is like, hey, there's a lot of objections around pricing. Could you speak to that specifically? And then maybe he wants to address Joe the jerk later, but keep it non-personal, bring it to a higher level, make it about the objections that need to be overcome or the culture that needs to be brought back into alignment versus like the one personal thing that's happening. So if you're the business owner, my ask to you is that when your team comes to you with these kinds of things, that you make it a priority to support your team and community in that moment. You may have 5,000 things on your plate. This is not something to go, yeah, I'll schedule that in at the end of the month or in 2 weeks when my calendar opens. This is the thing where you show up for, you figure out a way, you get up early, you work late, you do it on a Saturday. I don't know what you have to do, but you find a way to show up for them because these are really important moments inside of your community. And it's a really important way to support your community team when they need something like this. And my hope is that over time, you've built a really great cohesive relationship where you have good plans in place for things like this. You have good boundaries like we talked about in the internal communication training so that everything is really clear and you can keep your commitments to each other and show up for each other in the best way possible so that you can really succeed at whatever your key role is inside of the organization.